Hey guys, Curtis here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about anxiety and how to treat yourself for anxiety problems, including anxiety disorders. You may or may not have seen my old video about how I cured myself of a severe social anxiety disorder. If you haven't seen it, if you want, you can watch it by looking back at the old videos on my channel. But I'm going to be going over that method in this video and going into more detail about it and just talking about some stuff that I've learned over the years using this method for treating anxiety. It's a method that's done completely alone. You don't need a therapist and you don't need any money except when I first learned it, I learned it from a book. So, maybe $10 for a book. But this is a method that I learned in a book called Letting Go by David R. Hawkins. You can find it on Amazon. It's a yellow and white book. And he just talks about the value of letting go of negative emotions in that book. And I read that book many years ago, but I never did it. And then one day I sat down and I actually tried to do it for anxiety and let go of my anxiety, and it worked. And ultimately, by using that method for a little while, I cured a severe anxiety disorder that I had. And I'm going to tell you, I talked about that experience in my old video, if you want to look it up on my channel after this video. But I'm going to go into what I did and also what I've learned since then, because I've been doing this technique for several years now. And I have a bunch of notes, and I'm actually planning to write a book about this, about these notes, and I'm publishing this video to get people's feedback and see what they think of it, if they have any further questions that, when I write my book, what should I write about? Should I answer more questions that you guys have? So I will be reading all of your comments, at least like the first 1,000 or so. My old video got a lot of comments, and I haven't even read them all because every time I go back, there's always more. But basically, this is a method where you can, by yourself, with no money, no therapist, no expensive tools, no audio programs, anything like that. Once you learn this method, you can cure yourself of feelings of anxiety. And in my experience, anxiety disorders are just your negative behavioral patterns that happen because you have anxiety. So if you get rid of the anxiety, the behavioral adaptation or adaptation to that anxiety goes away, and therefore your disorder is gone. I'm going to get right into my notes. What is the big benefit of this method? Well, if you do this method with yourself, and you are consistent with it and you really apply it to your life, you can get rid of, in my experience, any feeling of anxiety about anything. My anxiety disorder was a social anxiety disorder. I was extremely afraid that people would criticize me or reject me in some way. And it stopped me from hanging out with my friends because just thinking about hanging out with them, I would be afraid. What if they don't like me? What if they criticize me? They had never criticized me ever, basically, except as jokes. And yet I was afraid, terrified that they would criticize me. It stopped me from applying to jobs. It stopped me from doing all sorts of stuff in my life. Mostly I avoided social events because of it. And so the big benefit of using this technique is that you get rid of things like that in your life. I have a family member who had strangely developed an anxiety of flying on airplanes. He had been flying on airplanes for his job for like decades, and out of nowhere he developed airplane anxiety. And I didn't talk to him about this method because it's kind of out there, but I wasn't trying to be his therapist or anything. But you can get rid of that. You can get rid of stuff like that, and then you'll just be free to do what you want. So the big benefit of this is get rid of anxiety, get rid of your avoidance of the things you're afraid of so that you can go and do them. A lot of people have all sorts of opportunity in life, but they avoid it because they're afraid. And they can even logically know that their fear is irrational. If you ask your boss for a raise, typically the worst thing that could happen, he says, no, we don't have the budget for that. So why are so many people afraid to ask their boss for a raise? You know, well, they're afraid of the confrontation, they're afraid of how they'll think of them, whatever. But there's so many scenarios like that in life where fear holds you back. You know, people don't get into the relationships they want because they're afraid of flirting with people. It's like, well, if you flirt with 100 people and just 1% of people are interested in you, guess what? You know, you just found your partner. Or something. You know, there's all sorts of things that can unlock when you're not afraid. And everybody has fear of something or many things. And I'm going to teach you a method for consistently dissolving your fear and getting rid of it so that you feel free to do whatever you want in life. Okay, so if you use this method, you will develop more confidence in every area of your life. You'll have less stress, that's for sure. I've dealt with tons of stress that comes from fear, and once you get rid of the fear, the stress, that source of stress goes away, and you might move on to the next source of stress that appears in your life, but the original one will be gone. So I'm just reading through my notes right here. So from this method, if you learn how to do this, you will get a powerful skill in your life. There are not many human beings that have the power to dissolve their own fear. Everyone has fears in life. Some people have fear around money, some people have fear around other people, some people have fear around specific things. You know, when I was young, I knew a kid who was afraid to get in a swimming pool. And I was at summer camp and everyone was swimming in the lake and he was standing on the edge and his friends were trying to help him slowly get into the pool and he was just standing there like shaking, you know. And so things like that, I'm pretty sure with this method you can get rid of all the fears of specific things like that or just general things as well. So this skill of dissolving fear, it's extremely valuable financially as well. First of all, if you were to go to therapy for a phobia, you might spend years in therapy and only reduce your phobia by like 50%. How much is that going to cost? You know, paying your insurance copays and stuff like that, or whatever. How much time is that going to take? You know, like 2 hours a week for 5 years? Who knows? And the method I'm going to teach you is basically the fastest method that exists for getting rid of fear. In my experience, one particular fear can be gotten rid of in 3 weeks or less, with less meaning sometimes in 1 day. Excuse my coughing because I'm getting over being sick, but we're going to continue. So this will save you money if you learn how to do this. You won't need therapy for fear anymore because you will become your own self-therapist. One thing I will say is that this method requires you to take action. Sitting around thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? That doesn't do anything. You got to actually do the action that I'm going to teach you. However, the action I'm going to teach you is very unstraining. Like it doesn't have much requirements. I literally, when I do this, I either sit in a chair or I lay on my bed and I do the process I'm going to teach you, and it gets rid of fear. And that's it. There's no expensive equipment required, no other person required, nothing like that. So why is this so important, dealing with anxiety and getting rid of your own anxiety, not just coping? You know, I was looking at books about anxiety, and there's people that write like books like how to cope with anxiety, and I'm like, that is some screwed up stuff, you know, because I'm like, I don't want to teach people how to cope, how to go like here's your anxiety, you go around your anxiety. I don't want to teach you that. I want to teach you how to go right through it. Get rid of it and not power through it. By the way, we're not doing this thing where you feel the fear and do it anyways. I think there's a book called that. You will feel your fear, but it's going to be a temporary sensation that we're going to get rid of. So anxiety, the reason why this is so important to learn is because anxiety paralyzes us and prevents us from taking action in our life. It warps our whole perception of what is possible in our life. When I was younger, and before I knew how to deal with anxiety, I literally planned my whole idea of what was possible for my career around my anxiety. I was so scared of other people. I was like, well, I have to just work on the internet, right? That's the only way to avoid other people is just work on the internet. So, find some kind of freelancer job or build. What I got into was building websites because all you have to do is email people basically. You don't even have to talk to them. Maybe one phone call and then you build a website for them and email them and stuff. So I had my whole career almost warped by my social anxiety, trying to avoid interviews, avoid bosses criticizing me, avoid coworkers, stuff like that. So one thing that's very interesting about this is if you look at other people doing something in their life and they seem so natural at it, they apply for a certain job and get it right away and get a big raise, or they go make friends in a social activity and they have a great social group or whatever. They get up on a stage and they do a speech. You look at other people doing things and you say, man, they look so fearless. I wish I could do that. If there is something in your life you want to do, you want to do it, but fear is stopping you, this technique will allow you to do it without fear if you apply this technique. So and what I've learned doing this technique is when there's something in my life that I know I want to do without question, but I'm not doing it on a daily basis, like something's just stopping me, a lot of times it is subconscious fear, and I'm going to teach you about how to deal with that. So anxiety stops us from achieving our fullest potential. It stops you from making as much money as you can make. There's practical aspects, like you're afraid to go into an interview, you're afraid they'll criticize you, that you're afraid that you'll get a job that your boss is criticizing you or verbally attacking you, or just maybe you're afraid you'll disappoint them and you'll get fired and you'll have to go live with your mom or something while you look for a new job. But there's also deeper issues that are caused by anxiety, like fear that you're not actually worthy of having a lot of money. In my own life lately, I'm probably going to end up making another video about how to increase the amount of money you're making by doing psychological techniques like this, because in my own life, I've had money problems all my life, and just lately I've been getting really deep into dealing with my fears around money. And I realized that because of my fear around money, I had a very low idea of what I was worth in life. And as I've been getting rid of that fear, interestingly enough, I've been getting the motivation to do more work and earn more money lately. The past several months, I've been specifically focusing on getting rid of fear around money, and I'm having more money flow into my life than was before. And so, this really does produce results. And maybe you don't have self-worth problems, but maybe you have I've even read stories about people who get money and then they're afraid to just keep it in their bank. Like they feel like they shouldn't have this much money, they need to go spend it, and they develop like a spending addiction because they're afraid of like actually having a high net worth. So they never let their net worth get high, they just spend it immediately. There's weird stuff like that, and it always, in my experience, it always has to do with subconscious feelings like fear, driving your behaviors in negative ways and creating negative patterns. And the only way to get rid of those negative patterns easily and effortlessly and really permanently is by getting rid of the negative emotion that causes them. And that is often fear and anxiety. So that's why we're going to learn about that today. Some other issues with anxiety and why this technique is so important and this knowledge is so important is that anxiety hurts your romantic life and your relationships, and it can cause you to have problems with your partner if you have a partner. Maybe like I've been telling you about, I have fear of money, fears regarding money issues that have been causing me stress, and that leads to stress in my relationship, because anytime my partner is spending money, I was freaking out, like, hey, we can't afford to spend that, even though logically we could. So it was leading to arguments between me and her, which was all caused by my anxiety. There are practical considerations like, oh, we need to save this much money, but anxiety can lead to arguments with your spouse because you're freaking out because you're afraid and they're not, and so they don't understand why you're freaking out. It can also stop you from ever getting a spouse. If you're afraid to talk to girls or guys or whatever, or you're afraid to take the next step in a relationship, that can cause huge problems. You know, I had anxiety before I proposed to my fiance, and I had to deal with that anxiety. And, you know, because I thought, you know, it's the biggest commitment I'll ever make in my life, so it's you know, something to be anxious about. But some people, they really look forward to being married, and they never felt any anxiety about it. So I had to deal with my feelings of anxiety about that, so that it didn't get in the way of my relationship. So also, anxiety can hurt your friendships. Anxiety is important to deal with because it can stop you from developing friendships to begin with. It can also lead to eroding the friendships you do have. I used to have a social anxiety disorder, like I said, which would stop me from hanging out with my oldest friends. I knew they liked me. I knew we'd have a good time hanging out, but I was still afraid to hang out with them because I was like, well, they haven't seen me in a couple months, and you know, what if I show up and they think it's something negative about me and they say something negative? I was freaking out. I had this disorder. It was called avoidant personality disorder, and it causes you to avoid people, so it's named correctly. So anxiety can stop you from being social, you know, fear of rejection from others. That's a big fear. I mean, I've heard before that fear of rejection from others is actually, in many people, it's actually a bigger fear than fear of death. Apparently, somebody said there was a study about that. You can also, you can be stopped from not just making friends, but gaining social standing. You know, what if you play a guitar, but you're afraid of what people will think of hearing you when you play your guitar? You know, you might want to get on stage and play a song for everybody, but you're too afraid of what they think of you. That fear is stopping you from achieving your dreams. So that's just an example. You know, fear and anxiety. By the way, fear and anxiety, in my mind, they're interchangeable words. Anxiety is just the feeling of fear. So another reason is that you need to learn this stuff is that anxiety hurts your health. Anxiety is a form of stress, and there's been many studies that have found stress affects your heart health. It can lead to, there's like stress hormones like cortisol and things like that, which actually can cause you to gain weight, and in some cases, anxiety can cause like overeating or nervous habits like biting your nails or, you know, all sorts of weird things. I am kind of an anxious overeater, although I have worked on that a lot and gotten a lot better at that. But when I get stressed, it used to cause me to like instantly overeat. I would be working on some project, and after like 2 hours of working on it, I'm stressed out. I instantly get up and go eat, and that would be caused by anxiety and stress. And I've worked on that a lot and gotten better. I think I still have room to get better though. But yeah, all sorts of health problems can be caused by anxiety. It's not just overeating. That's just a really common problem. And anxiety has to do with your mental health. You know, if you want to have good, solid mental health and self-confidence and just be a well-rounded person who can really achieve your dreams, you have to be able to get rid of anxiety, not just cope with anxiety, but actually get rid of it. And anxiety disorders and just anxiety in general. And by the way, every feeling of anxiety is almost like a miniature anxiety disorder. A disorder is typically something that drastically affects your life. But what I have found is that every single negative feeling can significantly affect you. It basically can stop you from getting a specific thing you want in life because you're either afraid or you just don't believe in yourself in that specific area, you know. And one of the things I have learned about dealing with negative feelings like anxiety, and including anxiety, is that they affect you in ways that you don't actually realize they're affecting you. So an example of that might be you might have assumptions about what is possible in your life that are actually being shaped by negative feelings of fear that are in your subconscious mind that you're not even aware of. And this is where this stuff gets really scary, but also really interesting, which is that your behavior can be driven by feelings that you don't know exist until you go looking for them. And I'm going to tell you about how to go looking for them in this video. So anxiety has enormous costs in your life. It's probably costing you about 1,000 times as much as you think it's costing you, because of that effect I just said, that you have anxieties that you're not even aware that they're fear. You just think they're normal for you for some reason, but they're actually anxiety that you can get rid of. So anxiety costs everyone enormously in the long run. In the long run of their lives, costs us money and friendships and enjoyment and good health. It's incredible what it costs us. So that's sort of the why you need to learn this skill of getting rid of anxiety. So imagine if you did learn how to get rid of anxiety feelings in your life. Not just cope, not just power through it, not just, oh, I'm going to do yoga to kind of get my mind off of it. But what if you could actually make it disappear? Well, your life would change for the better. You would gain, and you will gain, the ability to take action that you couldn't take before. There's probably at least a couple fears in your life right now that you are aware of that are stopping you from taking action. Maybe you have fear around your job, maybe you want a different job, but you're afraid to leave your current one because what if you end up at a worse one? You probably have topics that if you have a spouse, you're probably afraid to talk to them about, hey, they've been doing this, which I don't like lately, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. There's probably all sorts of stuff in your life that you can think about deeply and figure out that you're being stopped from taking action by fear. And or maybe you're actually taking extra action to avoid something you're scared of. You take the long way around some issue in your life because you're coping with fear and avoiding it. Like when I was younger, I thought I had to work only in a limited set of jobs because I was afraid of getting a job that interacted with people. So I was almost taking like a long way around, like learning skills that I wasn't even necessarily super good at or interested in, just because those were the only skills that would be able to pay me money working alone. So if you do learn how to get rid of fear, you will be able to increase your social life and your romantic life as well. Like I said, if fear stops us from making friends or hanging out with existing friends or building relationships or starting relationships or even getting laid, if you get rid of fear, you're going to open up those new avenues for you in your life. So you're going to make new friends more easily. You're going to help preserve the friendships you do have and deepen them in ways that you weren't comfortable doing before. You're going to feel more comfortable hanging out with people that you want to hang out with, but maybe you were too shy to ask them to hang out before. And also, you can make more friends because you'll feel comfortable being the center of attention. A lot of people, they're fine in small talk situations, but if you ask them to stand in front of a crowd of 50 people and tell a few jokes, they're not able to do that because they're too terrified. They have moderate social anxiety. They don't have severe social anxiety like I did with every single person you interact with, but they have moderate social anxiety where they can't get in front of a crowd. Fear of public speaking is supposedly a huge fear that millions of people have. Most people on earth apparently have fear of public speaking. I personally don't have fear of public speaking anymore. I don't get many opportunities to speak publicly. I do get to speak in small groups, like if I go to a Bible study or something like that, I can speak to a small group. But I did recently speak a while back at my father's funeral, and there was maybe like 50 people there or 40 people, I don't know. But I got up and I spoke, and I had no anxiety whatsoever. And several years ago, before I used the technique I'm about to teach you about, I would have had enormous anxiety speaking in front of like 40 people. So you will have the confidence to be the center of attention, because all your fear of being the center of attention will be gone. And then you just, once you get rid of fear, what you really figure out is you need to learn a little bit of social skills. There's actually a difference in having fear versus having social skills, meaning this is just a side note, but when I got rid of my social anxiety, I learned that I had no fear of talking to people, but I didn't know what to say. So I would like go up and I'd be like, okay, I feel comfortable saying hi, but what do I say next? It took me a couple of years actually to learn how to make small talk and just, build rapport and stuff like that with other people. So along with being able to talk to people and talk in front of people, you'll also be less rejected by others because you'll be less awkward in front of other people. People can tell when you're desperately nervous when you're talking to them. If you're shaking, if you're asking out a girl and you're like sweating, she's gonna notice and be like, okay, this guy's a loser. But so if you don't have that fear, you're not going to give off those nervous vibes, and everyone's going to feel more comfortable around you, and you're going to be able to pick up social cues better and stuff like that. So this skill is tremendously valuable for building relationships. Getting rid of fear, tremendously valuable. And it will help you achieve your goals in life, your financial goals, your not even just financial, but achievement goals that don't have to do with money. Whatever you want to do in life, what I've learned is if I know I want to do something, but I'm not doing it, it's because I have an internal block. That's what I've learned. I want to do this. I know I want to do it, but I have an internal block. And that block is not always fear. Sometimes it's guilt or shame or other emotions, but a lot of times it is fear. And sometimes even a feeling of guilt or shame or something like that can come out as fear in your mind. So you're like, I'm afraid to do this because I feel guilty about it. So it actually gets expressed as fear. Almost every negative emotion seems to get expressed as fear at some point in your psychological processes. So you will maximize your potential in life if you can get rid of all your fear, and I'm going to tell you how to do that. You'll be able to make more money. You'll be able to, get laid more if that's what you want to do, or have a better relationship with your wife or husband or whatever, Okay, so that's why you need to do this. You need to learn this. So what the hell is my story? How do I have the ability to tell you about this? Well, I've already kind of hinted at it. I had avoidant personality disorder, which is an extremely severe, in my case, it was extremely severe social anxiety disorder. It stopped me from making friends as a kid. I did have some friends just because I met people in school and stuff at church just by default, but I would have made so many more friends if I didn't have it. It also stopped me from preserving friendships because I would have fear of calling up my old friends and inviting them to hang out because I was afraid. It stopped me from pursuing romantic relationships. I only realized way after the fact there were so many girls that were interested in me that I never pursued because I was so terrified to ask them out. So I'm sure lots of people can relate to that one. I got interested in actually I've always been interested in self-help since I was like 15 or 16 or something. But in my 20s, I think maybe 19, 20, I found the Letting Go book by David R. Hawkins, and I didn't actually use it until I was like 26 or 27 or something. I didn't actually try it until years later. But this technique worked. The Letting Go technique worked, and I'm going to teach you in this video how to apply it specifically to anxiety in a way that's highly effective. His book is great, but I'm going to teach you some extra stuff that I've learned by doing it and my version, of it. So in my life, the first time I ever used the Letting Go technique, I used it on anxiety, and it literally removed half my anxiety disorder in one day, in like 1 hour. It was insane. I had enormous anxiety. I used this technique. I felt the anxiety. I let go of it. It actually got so overwhelming the first time I did it that I had to stop because I was like, I can't take this anymore. But then I walked downstairs and my anxiety was like 50% of what it used to be, and I was like, oh my God, this actually had a real effect on me. And I'm going to tell you how that all works. You don't have to know how that works, but if you've read the book, you know how it works. If you've done it, there's a difference between reading the book and doing it. But my story is basically I used it on a anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and 50% of it was gone on the first day. Then about a month later, I realized, okay, I still have some of my disorder left. I've been dealing with it for a month now. I know some of it's left. So I used the technique again, and I got rid of pretty much all of it. And my disorder was pretty much gone ever since that day. And now, the funny thing is, I was so scared of talking in front of other people and hanging out with people back then. Now I love public speaking. I make these YouTube videos primarily when I'm inspired. I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I don't want to be a YouTuber. I just want to help people, and at some point I want to write a book about this anxiety stuff. I did write a short book before, but I want to write a little bit more in-depth book now that I've been using it for a couple more years, and I have more to share about it, which I'm going to teach you in this video, by the way. But I love getting in front of people and sharing my ideas now. It's like my favorite thing. And I could never live up to that potential when I had anxiety around other people, but now I don't have that anxiety. And I might have, random little feelings of anxiety here and there, but nothing like I used to. So, and my life is less stressful. That's another thing about me is my life is just less stressful. When I get anxiety come up, I know right away if this is something I can deal with, I can get rid of it. Sometimes it takes a week. Sometimes the maximum it's ever taken me is 3 weeks to get rid of one feeling of anxiety around a specific thing in my life, whether it's like a money issue or a whatever issue. But I've always been able to really get rid of it basically in 3 weeks or less. So now we're going to get into actually how to do this technique of getting rid of anxiety. So most people run away from their anxiety. They avoid it, they suppress it. It's called suppression or repression. Repression is basically where you're so afraid of the feeling that you don't even realize you have it because you're like avoiding it entirely. Suppression is like, I know I have anxiety, I can't handle it, I'm going to go eat some food. I'm gonna go do yoga. I'm gonna go on a bike ride. I'm gonna go call out my friends. I'm gonna go shopping. I'm gonna go do something unhealthy. So suppression or repression are how most people deal with anxiety, and that's why they never get better because they don't know the healthy way to deal with it, which I'm gonna teach you. So the first thing you want to do before you get rid of anxiety is you want to make what I call a fear score. And what the hell is this? Well, a fear score is you're gonna rate. Okay, you're actually going to write out, this is the method, this is the first step in getting rid of your anxiety. Step 1, you're going to write out a detailed description of exactly what you are afraid of. Don't just say, I'm afraid of people. You got to say, I'm afraid that I'm going to call this friend and he's going to agree to hang out with me and I'm going to show up at his house and the first thing he's going to say is, hey man, you look like you gained some weight. Or, no, dude, that's stupid. Or something when I'm talking to him, he's going to disagree with me. You got to write out specifically what you're afraid of and rate it on a 1 to 10 scale of how intense that fear is. Now, why are we doing this? Well, the honest truth is because a few things. Number one, there's no scientific way to measure how anxious you are. I mean, maybe people could hook up a machine and see how fast your heartbeat is or something, but we're not going to do all that. This is a at-home treatment. You don't need any scientists to help you. So your fear score, that's what I call it. You're going to rate your specific fear on a scale of 1 to 10, and then after we do the technique, you're going to rate it again, and we're going to see if it decreased. And if it did decrease, that means you're making progress. If it didn't decrease, that means you have to keep doing it until it's gone. So one thing to note, please be honest with yourself about what you're afraid of. Some fears are so intense, people are actually they're too scared to even look at the fear. So actually getting rid of the fear, the first step of getting rid of it is being willing to explain to yourself what it is and being honest. I am scared that X will happen. And this can be a scary process. This is actually the beginning of feeling your fear and letting it go. But not for everyone. You might be able to think of well, I'm scared of flying on airplanes, but I'm not in an airplane now, so I'm not scared. So maybe you'll feel the fear when you're rating it. Maybe you won't. But just think of how intense the fear is when you do feel it. Example of this. I have some notes here. I'm reading off. Just some examples of fears I've let go of recently is just I've been dealing a lot, like I said earlier, with money fears. I've always been very poor, but lately I've been surrendering fears around money and my self-worth and stuff like that. And I've actually been working a lot more lately and making more money. Because once I got rid of my fear, the fear of not having enough money was actually what was holding me back from working to make more money. It was this weird inversion where it's I was so afraid of running out of money and not being able to pay my bills. I was afraid to even look at how much money I needed to make by working in order to work that much to get that much money. So it's the fear was completely destructive. It was not pushing me in the right direction. It's pushing me away from the solution to my problem. So you can do this with one fear at a time. I actually suggest that. You can write out a long list of everything you're afraid of that you can think of and score it on 1 to 10 with your fear score, but you can just do one at a time. You should probably do one at a time, actually. So step 1 is think about your fear and rate its intensity with your fear score on 1 to 10. Step 2, this is how you get rid of your fear. This is the technique that's taught in the Yellow Letting Go book by David R. Hawkins. What I do is I lay down on my bed alone You don't want to have any noise. You don't want to have anybody distracting you. You got to be alone. Don't be tired when you do this because you'll just fall asleep. You got to do this in the middle of the day, basically. Lay down on your bed, or you can sit in a chair like this. I've done it both ways. I prefer laying in bed though. So the letting go technique is this. You allow your anxiety to come up. In fact, you invite your anxiety to come up into your mind. If it doesn't come up, you actually need to start thinking about the thing you're afraid of, the specific outcome that you wrote down in your fear score that you're afraid of. Start thinking about what it would be like to be in that scenario that you're afraid of. And do this until the fear starts coming up. And this is actually called the welcoming technique. I forget who wrote about it, where you welcome the fear. You welcome the negative feeling, in this case, fear. If you don't feel your anxiety come up, that probably means you're suppressing it, or you're actually repressing it because you're afraid to feel the fear. That's normal. Feeling fear is scary. So if you're afraid to feel the fear, letting that afraidness happen is actually the first step in feeling your fear. Now you might be wondering, why the hell do I want to lay down in my bed and feel fear? Well, I explained this in my last video about anxiety, but here's the deal, guys. Fear is like an energy field that your mind is attuned to. And as you let it happen without resisting it, it actually starts to run out. And I think the reason this happens is because as you decide to no longer be afraid of feeling your fear, you are actually being courageous in the face of that fear. You're saying, I know I'm afraid of this, but I'm choosing to not be afraid of this feeling anymore. And think about it like this. This fear is your feeling. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. Nobody else owns this fear. It belongs to you, and therefore you have the right and the power and the absolute control over getting rid of it. No one can get rid of it for you. Well, actually, there's some crazy spiritual stuff I've been doing where people actually can get rid of fear for you. I've done it once or twice, but that's beyond the point. That's way out of this video. Nobody in real life, other than maybe me and 2 other people on the planet Earth, know how to get rid of your fear for you. So you have the right. I acknowledge your rights to get rid of your fear and be without it. And if you let your fear go, if you let it happen, that's actually what letting go means. It means letting go of resistance of it. Let your fear happen, and with the intent that I am going to let this go and it's going to go away. If you actually expect success in this, it will actually help success to happen, or so I've heard from people who know more about this than I do. A common fear that I deal with is actually when I'm motivated by fear, it's almost like pushing me to do the wrong action. Like if I'm afraid of running out of money, sometimes the fear will be like, I need to work more, or once I got over the resistance to working, now I work to make money, but on a regular basis. When I wasn't before, I was pretty lazy before. Now sometimes my fear, if I have more fear of money come up, the fear is like, okay, you got to go do more work, and sometimes I actually do too much work. Like I stress myself out doing too much work. It's like, wait a second. I need to surrender this fear and then evaluate what work needs to be done today or this week. So yeah, it's funny how fear can make you not work, and then a different fear that's kind of along the same vein can make you work too much. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna lay down. You're gonna think about what you're afraid of. You're gonna let the feeling come up. If you're scared of doing this while you're doing it, that means it's working. Because you want to feel the fear and let it go. Let it happen. Let it go is actually maybe a bad phrase for this, because you're actually letting it happen. You're letting your fear happen, and you're choosing to get rid of it by being courageous in the face of it. So a few rules about this, of letting your fear happen. Number 1, like I said, Fear is an energy field to which your mind is attuned. That's a good way of explaining it, I think. And by choosing to courageously feel it, you are choosing to replace your fear with courage. And so fear actually runs out. Believe it or not, your fear, if you let it happen without resisting it on purpose with the intent of getting rid of it, it runs out. And my feelings of fear, the longest it's ever taken me to surrender one feeling of fear was about 3 weeks doing this surrender method, maybe 1 to 2 hours a day. I might have missed a day or two in there. Maybe I miss 1 or 2 days a week over 3 weeks. So maybe like a total of 15 days for 1 to 2 hours a day. But those are the really intense fears that take me 3 weeks. There are many, like 100 small aspects of fear that I have surrendered in 1 day. Sometimes you can do it in 1 hour. The shortest ones I've ever had were like 20 minutes. But those are pretty rare. Typically they take around 2 hours, maybe 1 to 2 hours for a normal one. Then like 3 to 5 days for an intense one. And then like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, working 1 to 2 hours a day for like the most intense fears that I've ever had. So that's just my experience. I don't think many people who are doing this correctly are going to have more than a couple weeks to get rid of one fear. And another thing so when you're doing this, letting fear happen, you cannot just do it for like 1 minute or 5 minutes. I tell people you have to do it for at least 15 minutes. That's the bare minimum of a session. Because the first 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, you might just be searching for your fear, trying to let it come out. You might actually be repressing it. Everyone has repressed negative emotions. And it might take you 10 or 15 minutes just to get it to come up, and then you start feeling it, and then you need to let it run out for another 45 minutes or an hour and a half or 3 days or whatever. In case you didn't pick up, the goal of this method is to feel the fear, but let it happen and let it go. You're not avoiding it anymore. Let's see, some notes I've taken here. Sometimes this process, what you want to do is you want to do it as long as you can handle. If you can handle feeling your anxiety for 4 hours straight, you can do that. The sooner you do it, the sooner you're going to get rid of it. If you can only handle 45 minutes and then you need to stop, or 20 minutes and then you need to stop, you can stop. And this stuff is emotionally draining. It's very rare that I do this. Well, let me say this correctly. It's very rare that I do this and I'm not feeling like kind of emotionally drained afterwards. Usually I'm feeling emotionally drained, but if I succeeded in getting rid of the anxiety, I also feel relief. And then I could take a nap and I'll wake up feeling refreshed. Or oftentimes, if I get rid of feeling of anxiety, it'll take until the next day or even 2 or 3 days later until I'm fully relieved. Like, there's this thing that happens that I call lingering anxiety, where you get rid of a fear and then you're actually like questioning, did I really succeed at getting rid of that? Like it's almost like you opened up a new doorway into a new room in your house that you've never, like a magical room appeared in your house. You open up a door and you're like looking around like, what is this? What is this new zone I can explore in my life? That's almost what it feels like, opening up the door to Narnia or something. When you get rid of a fear that's been with you your entire life, suddenly you have new capabilities, and it can take you a couple days to adjust to that. When you have a fear of like money issues or whatever, and you get rid of that fear, it can take you time to grow into your new capability, your new mental capability. Because when you have fear, you might not even feel comfortable thinking about making more money or dating someone or making new friends or getting on a podium and talking to 100 people. You might not even consider that an option in your life, and then suddenly you let go of your fear and suddenly you have new thoughts like, I'd really like to try that sometime. And you say, wait a second, can I do that? Wait, oh, I can. So, so one session of letting go, it needs to last bare minimum 15 minutes, but I suggest an hour or more if you can handle it. For really intense feelings, you might not be able to handle it, but I've only had a couple times in my life where I couldn't handle it. Most of the time, if it's taken me more than 1 day to get over it, I just stop after like 2 or 3 hours and I say, okay, I'll continue tomorrow. I'm out of energy right now. It does kind of take mental willpower to let go. And yeah, it can take some recovery time. So after you let the anxiety happen long enough, intentionally, it will run out. It will disappear. And sometimes when you do this, you'll have an epiphany when it happens, and you'll have some sort of like realization of new truth in your mind. Like before you thought you weren't capable of doing something, and suddenly you realize you are capable of doing it, or you realize like it doesn't even matter to you at all. Um, with the sometimes when you let go of a feeling, it's really positive right away. You have immediate relief. Other times you're emotionally drained, and other times there's lingering question of am I really free of this? And then after a couple of days you realize you are. Okay, why this works? Why does the letting go method even work? I briefly talked about it. It's because the feeling only exists within you. It doesn't exist within other people. They have their own anxieties, but your feeling is yours. It's your property. You are allowed to get rid of it if you want to. So by courageously facing it and letting it happen, you are taking responsibility for your own feelings, and you are adopting an attitude of I can get rid of this. I can be courageous in the face of fear. And by feeling your fear intentionally, you're actually being courageous in that moment, and courage replaces fear. Yeah, so it's your feeling. You own it. No one can tell you that you're not allowed to get rid of it. Once you've done it, once you've worked on it for a while, you take your fear score again and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 and compare it to your initial rating, and that's how we're going to be measuring your progress. You know, a lot of scientists who measure feelings like depression, anxiety, and stuff, they do it based on patient surveys. They just ask them like, can you rate the intensity? You know, what do you agree with neutral? You know, do you fill in the bubble for neutral, strongly agree, or very strongly agree? You know, something like that. They just rate it on customer surveys. So when you're surveying yourself with a scale 1 to 10, it's basically, you know, as scientific as you could get, unless you're gonna like hook up your brain to an MRI or something, which we're not gonna do that. Okay. So what is the first step that you can take right now, literally when you're done watching this video, to start getting rid of feelings of anxiety that you have today? And the answer is to do this process that I've been talking about. So the first thing you're going to want to do is think of something that you're feeling anxious about, and you're going to make your fear score for it, which is you're going to write down, or you can type out exactly what you're afraid of, or you can explain it yourself in your head, but it might help you to type it out the first couple times. Type out exactly what you're afraid of, the exact scenario. What exactly are you afraid of? Don't say, I'm afraid of money issues. No. Say, I'm afraid my boss is going to fire me because he doesn't like this job I've been doing, and then I'm going to have a hard time getting work, and then I'm going to have to take a shitty job, and then that boss is going to dislike me, and I'm going to want to quit there, but I can't quit there because I got to pay my bills, and then I'm going to feel trapped. Just go into the in-depth, all the way into the scenario you're afraid of. And go into it and rate the intensity of that fear on a 1 to 10 scale. That's your fear score. And do your first letting go session right after that. Lay down on your bed, or you need to be alone for this. This really doesn't work with other people around. I have found you need to be alone and able to contemplate and sort of relax. I prefer to be in my bedroom, laying on my bed while I'm wide awake, not while I'm tired. I'll just fall asleep. You probably will too. But go lay down on your bed or on a couch somewhere and do this for a minimum of 15 minutes. You let the fear come up and happen to you, and you're replacing it with courage by letting it happen to you. But I would really recommend at least like an hour, honestly. So what do you do to make this really work? You don't just do it once. How do you get in shape at the gym? You don't go to the gym and lift one weight. You go to the gym and lift a weight today, and then you go tomorrow, and then you go the next day, or you do it every other day. You do it nonstop for a portion of time each day or each week for the rest of your life if you want to stay in shape. The same thing is true with this anxiety. Now, the good news about getting rid of anxiety is that once you get rid of a feeling of anxiety, you've replaced that energy of anxiety with courage. In my experience, that specific feeling never comes back. That instance of anxiety never comes back. But once that's out of the way, you're going to start growing in life and you're going to reach new pain points where there's new anxieties that are holding you back. And then you're going to have to address those as well. And it's probably possible to eventually reach a point where we never feel any anxiety. And that's actually what Dr. Hawkins talks about in his books, which is the level of enlightenment where you feel no negative feelings at all. But we're just talking about anxiety. There's other negative feelings that you can actually get rid of this same way as well. But I'm just talking about my experience with anxiety right now. So just like you have to work out regularly at a gym to stay in shape, if you want to keep getting rid of anxiety and really succeed at it, you have to regularly do these sessions. They're self-treatment sessions. You're not going to get a better deal than this, folks. It's free, and you can do it alone without anyone's help. So if you have social anxiety, it's perfect because you don't need to talk to anybody about it. You don't need to explain to anybody what you're doing. Let's see, work it into your schedule. Yeah, I do this so often now. I don't do it at a specific time every day, but it's because it's such a big part of my life that I don't really need to schedule it. I just do it whenever I have negative feelings that are bothering me. I'm like, okay, and sometimes I'll put it off for like a couple weeks or even a month or two, and then I'll just be like really bothered by it. I'm like, okay, I've been avoiding it. I've been suppressing it by doing other stuff. I really got to deal with this feeling, and I'll go and I'll do it. I've been doing that for years now, just getting rid of hundreds and hundreds of instances of anxiety and other negative emotions, and I've grown significantly as a person because of it. It's a very flexible habit you can build to do this. You don't have to do it at a specific time every day, and you don't have to do it for a specific length every day, but I would say minimum of 15 minutes if you're going to do it. You can do it in any time your free time. A good way to build a constructive habit like this is just to say, every day in my first hour of free time, I'm going to do this. So if your first hour of free time is in the morning because you're off work today or whatever, you do it then. If you don't get home from work until late and then you got to cook dinner and then you don't have free time till 8 p.m., you do it then. This is not something you need to do at a certain time each day. Okay, I wrote in my notes, super achiever mode. Do this routine even if you don't feel anxiety today. Now this is an advanced thing that is very important, and it's actually great advice if you want to avoid problems in life. While you are feeling good, that is the best time to work on your anxiety. Now what the hell does that mean? How can I work on my anxiety if I'm feeling good today or this week or this year? And the answer is, in your subconscious mind, there are bad feelings that you have put out of your mind for so many years or months that you don't even think about them anymore, but they hold you back in ways you can't imagine. And so what you can do is lay down on your bed and do this session and just ask your subconscious mind, say, subconscious mind, please bring up into my conscious mind whatever it is I'm still afraid of. And if you use this, what's called the welcoming technique, to bring forth and welcome anxiety or other negative emotions, you can bring up anxiety before it destroys your life. Before you're too afraid, like let's say you have a good job now, but you think a year from now you're going to want to move up in the world and this job kind of feels limited. Before you have to go through all that process of applying for jobs and going through anxiety about getting interviewed, start doing anxiety work now. Start imagining yourself in that position of doing an interview, and you'll realize the fear is inside you now, and that's what's stopping you from taking action now. So a lot of times, unless you're enlightened, you probably have fear inside you. And so you need to, if you don't feel it consciously, you need to welcome it and go, I actually call it digging for it, digging in my subconscious mind for it. And this is almost a preventative exercise you can do, which is seek out anxiety when you're not feeling it in order to get rid of it. And then it'll be gone, and then something bad won't happen to you later. And something I've learned is that negative emotions tend to manifest as They can manifest as physical illnesses. They can also manifest as like bad karma, like just bad things happening to you or bad situations in your life. And if you don't get rid of them and clear them out with this process, you might have to live through some bad health problems later in life, that because you'll have like a feeling of fear or whatever that's buried in your subconscious mind for 10 years, and then one day it comes up and starts affecting you. It's really weird, but this is actually how people can develop chronic illnesses later in life. A lot of chronic illnesses, based on just my personal research, my spiritual research into this, and other people I've talked to, a lot of chronic illnesses, probably the vast majority of them, are actually the result of subconscious negative emotions that are not healed. And so they ultimately come out and you start sort of paying off the karma of them, so to speak, by living through physical health problems. You don't want this to happen. You don't want this to happen. You want to deal with your anxiety now. You want to do that because you don't want to develop bad problems later on because you kicked the can down the road. So just like if you exercise now, every day, you lift weights every day now, maybe a year from now, if you get a construction job, you're going to be able to do that job and lift everything. Well, it's the same way with this. If you start working on anxiety now and asking for it to come up in your mind so you can surrender it, maybe a year from now, there's going to be someone that you want to ask out and you're going to have the confidence to do it. Or you're going to have an opportunity to go into some kind of career path that you never imagined would be available to you before, but now you have the confidence to do it. There's all sorts of shit, there's all sorts of stuff that might become available if you develop self-confidence now. But this is a long, drawn-out process. You can get rid of one feeling of anxiety today or this week or this month, but to really handle an issue, sometimes you might have 20 small feelings of anxiety to resolve. Lately I've been dealing with my feelings of fear around money issues and running out of money and self-worth and stuff like that. And I've surrendered, like a couple dozen feelings of fear about money so far, and they all connect to money. But they all have to do with a different aspect. And one of it is like, what if this happens in my life and I'm afraid of that? And then another one is, well, what if this person says this and I'm afraid of that? And it has to do with the bills not being paid. And what if this happens and this bad situation happens? They're all specific anxieties, and I'm surrendering each one. And every time I do, it's like my self-esteem expands. And I've actually been working more and more lately and actually enjoying a lot of it and making more money as a result of surrendering fear around money. What a surprise. You change your energy and your physical circumstances actually change. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm able to support myself financially. I have been in the past, but just barely, living on a shoestring budget, and now I'm actually doing much better. I'm still working on it, but I'm seeing so much good progress. It's like I want to tell the world about this amazing technique that can get you relationships, sex, money, better jobs, whatever. Getting rid of your anxiety lets you achieve your dreams. So that's basically it. That's most of my notes. I'm on my last page of notes here. One thing to know about the letting go technique, it will be uncomfortable while you're letting go of anxiety because you're going to be feeling the anxiety. That's the point. Just like working out at the gym, your muscles are going to get sore. You're going to get tired. That's the point. But when you sleep, come back the next day, your muscles are going to be stronger. That's the point. With anxiety, the good news is when you surrender anxiety significantly, or when you surrender anxiety successfully, it doesn't come back. That specific anxiety does not come back. Now, you might have 30 different specific fears around money or sex or whatever that need to be surrendered. So it feels like this one issue keeps cropping up in your life, but that's just because you had a lot of fears around that one topic. The one specific fear you surrender successfully at a time does not come back. So it's like you're making permanent spiritual progress in your life. You really are. And that's actually better than working out at the gym, because if you work out at the gym like I used to, and then you stop like I did, you lose most of your muscle mass, and you lose it all. You have to do it again when you go back. But with anxiety and your spiritual self-confidence, you never really lose self-confidence. Something important to note, the sooner you do this, the sooner you will reap the rewards. Why wait 6 months before you start surrendering anxiety? why not do it now? And then those 6 months you're going to live through anyways, you're going to have less anxiety through those 6 months. What I've learned is the sooner you do the tough stuff in life, the sooner you get rewards, and your total stress in life is reduced over the course of your life. Okay, you have to do this. My next note is you have to do this to learn what it's like. I never knew what letting go of negative emotions would feel like until I actually sat down to do it. And that was like 5 or 6 years or something after I read the book, Letting Go by Dr. Hawkins. So I read about it, sounded great, I never did it, and then like 6 years later I did it, and then it started working for me, and then I started doing it all the time. I guess I just needed to build up momentum or something, or the willingness to try something new. One big complaint I saw in the comments in my last video, people lay down on their bed and they can't get anxiety to come up. That probably means you're repressing it because you're actually so scared of it coming up that you don't want it to come up. So you actually have to stop yourself. Like if you get the thought, if you try to do this and you get the thought, I should be doing something else, that's actually a fearful thought, and that's a sign that you're getting into your fear. So you actually can be stopped from succeeding by having fear of feeling your fear. And what you do about that is you just let the fear all happen. The fear of feeling the fear, let that fear happen. Use the letting go technique on that. And that's a sign that you're approaching the fear successfully. So that's actually, it can be a good sign. If you're afraid of doing the technique, that means you are tapping into your fear. It's kind of weird how fear can be kind of recursive like that. One thing I saw in the comments on my original video is some people criticized it and said this will never work or this is stupid. One guy, I did publish the old video as an ebook on Amazon, and one guy left a horrible review, and I don't even think well, I know he didn't try the technique because he's trash talking it like it won't work, and I'm like, well, the only people who say it doesn't work are the people who've never done it before. Nobody says it doesn't work after they've done it successfully, because it does work, you know, by definition. And he never said he tried it. He just said it sounds stupid, and I'm not, you know, it sounds stupid. So the most vocal, I wrote here, the most vocal critics are the people who never even tried. And you know what? There's people like that in life, in every area of life. You just got to ignore them, and you got to take action and do it and win. It is unscientific. Yes, it's unscientific. Nobody ever said this was science. Okay, this is human psychology. Psychology is often laughed at for being an unscientific field by other scientists who deal with, like, you know, let's measure the physics of an atom or something. This is not physics. This is emotions. It's supposed to get messy and uncertain, you know, but guess what? If you can build a better life for yourself, why not do something that sounds unscientific? The only scientific way to test this theory that this letting go method works is to try it yourself. Or you could do a survey of 1,000 people who have tried it and see what the results are, but you know, who knows if they're telling the truth? I don't know. Just do it yourself and do a test on it. If you're an honest person, you got to try it yourself before you poo-poo it and say it doesn't work. Final notes. Being afraid to do the letting go technique is a sign that you really need to do the letting go technique. If you're afraid to address your own anxiety, that's because you have anxiety that needs to be addressed. So that's the end of my notes. If you do the letting go technique, actually, if you ever read the book by Dr. Hawkins and done it yourself, go ahead and tell me about it in the comments. I'll read them. If you use this technique for anxiety, I'll read your comments. I'll probably read the first like 500 or 1,000 comments. If it goes any higher than that, I might lose track of what I've read and what I haven't read. And if anyone cares about this, which I think they do because they liked my first video, I am eventually going to write a better book than my last ebook. And I really want to. And I think I've actually been dealing with getting over my blocks to writing that book. But this step of making this video is my first step in getting over those blocks. So I hope this helps you. This is my experience using the letting go technique with Dr. Hawkins. His technique for fear specifically, I've given you some tips on how I did it. The fear score, where you rate it 1 to 10, that's a great way to track your progress, because sometimes you're not able to track your progress very easily. You say, have I really made progress? I'm not sure. The anxiety's still there. I've been working on it. I'm not sure. Use the fear score technique to track your progress. And just do it. Just say I'm going to do it 1 hour a day for a month and on anxiety and see what happens. So that's all I have for you guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.